Listening to the new Liberal leader, the federal Liberal leader, Susan Lee, on a radio interview this morning, I heard someone who wants to believe in what she called Liberal values. A woman who in her private life has achieved many extraordinary things, not the least raising a family while studying at university, gaining of all things a pilot's licence and working as a commercial pilot, and someone who, unlike many politicians, seems to have lived a real life as opposed to what it seems like to me, the lawyer turned into political staffer and then advisor and getting a seat type politician. Now, I mentioned Victoria's Treasurer Jacqueline Symes. Well, that's her CV. She was a lawyer and advisor and she's now a minister. And I suspect my first guest, James Newbury, might disagree with my assessment of the current political class and their career paths. But at least James, as an advisor in a role he worked in for a couple of senior Liberals, they're ones I admire greatly in Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey. But back to Susan Lee's interview on 3RW this morning. Now, I defy anyone who heard that to think to themselves, gee, that's the sort of leader the Liberals need. That's the sort of future Prime Minister I want. An inspiring character that's going to do the impossible and turn voters back to voting Liberal in big numbers. Now, Susan Lee deserves a chance. She's not even sat in the Parliament yet as opposition leader, and I'll give her that opportunity. But when you look around this great country, you don't have to be a political nerd to realise how much trouble the actual Liberal brand is in. As I said, we'll talk to Tasmania later, but in all likelihood, the Liberals will lose the Treasury benches in that state, and that will leave only one or two governments of a Conservative bent out of the 6 states and the 2 territories. Now, Queensland's David Crisafulli, he is going to be the only state premier with the word Liberal in his title. The Northern Territory is governed by the promising country Liberal Leah Finocchiaro, but the rest of them are Labor, including, of course, the federal government. Now, quite likely, Anthony Albanese or maybe Jim Chalmers will run this country for at least the next 6 years, as depressing as that might seem. This is exactly the reason why the Liberals need to find an outstandingly strong figure to lead the coalition. And what I heard this morning, not just the personality, but the policy. The Libs cannot afford at all to be Labor-lite. Look what happened when that happened during the last election. But there was Susan Lee talking about supporting net zero, a policy, of course, signed up by the Libs in 2001 by Scott Morrison. Here's Susan Lee today.
Our policy will be underpinned by 2 goals, Tom: reducing emissions and playing our part in the global effort, and delivering a stable energy grid which provides affordable, reliable power for households and businesses. And those 2 things go hand in hand.
Susan Lee this morning. Now, the Coalition's energy policy, in my view, should be simple. They should say, we will keep the lights on and industry humming by using every piece of energy advantage Australia has, including coal, gas, wind, sun, water and uranium. Now, I'm not hearing that, and I suspect that if a Liberal leader said that, the party would implode with factions fighting each other. But they're not governing for the next 6 years. At least there's plenty of time to have this argument. I mean, then you have, in no particular order, policies on immigration, taxation, government spending, size of the public service, politicians' perks, the flag. I could go on and on. The next leader is the next leader even in the Parliament? Maybe not. Can the Liberals survive doing what they're doing now? Maybe not. But making the same mistakes that they made on the 3rd of May by being Labor-lite delivers the result they now have. A strong leader should not and would not put up with that.